Hello and welcome to Cymera, Britain's only book festival celebrating science fiction, fantasy and horror writing. My name is Anne Landman and I'm the festival's founder and artistic director. Right about now, I'd hope to be welcoming you to beautiful Edinburgh, to our venue The Pleasance, for a weekend packed with events. Writing workshop, panels, readings, open mics, a quiz, a ceilidh, 2 plays. We had so much in store for you. Thank you for joining us online instead, to be part of our programme from the safety of your homes. We're very excited to still bring you a fantastic lineup of speakers. We'd ask you that you support our speakers, and there's many ways you can do that. You can buy their books or borrow them from the library. You can donate to them directly via their Patreon or Ko-fi. You will find the links for that below in the description. We encourage you to buy a ticket for our events, even the pre-recorded ones. All ticket money will go directly to our speakers. You can also donate to the festival, and all donations via the donation page will be split between our speakers, once we've covered our costs like the Zoom account. Thank you again for joining us in this brave new world of digital events. We hope you have a chance to check out all 33 of ours over the weekend. Please let us know what you think of them. Do get in touch via social media, the chat function in Zoom, or drop us an email on info@chimerafestival.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we look forward to seeing you in person next year for Cymera 2021.
Afternoon, everyone. We are now officially broadcasting live. We are the first live event, part of Cymera Festival 2020 online. Thanks, Pete. It's a strong response there. You're on my left, by the way. You're over there. Welcome, everyone, to Cymera Festival, the UK's only dedicated science fiction, fantasy, and horror festival. For the next 50 minutes, I will be your host. My name is Eleanor Pender, and I have the great joy of sitting here and having a chat with Bex Hogan and PM Freestone. This is going to be a very fun 50 minutes because there is a lot to get through. We have 4 books basically to really cover, and technically like 5 if you count the fact that Bex hasn't really finished her series. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce our authors, then we are going to have a bit of a chat about their wonderful books and the wonderful worlds. If you have any questions at any point, obviously within a physical room, you would have to hold those questions in tight, but the glory of online is that you don't have to do that. Do feel free to pop questions into either the chat or the Q&A boxes you'll find at the bottom of the screen. And you can direct them to, if you could direct them to all panelists, then we will all be able to see those questions. Of course, you are able to share questions with the audience in the chat column, and all attendees will be able to see those. Of course, if anyone has any questions about where to put their questions, do pop it in the chat, and then we'll be able to deal with that as we go on. So, apparently raised on a healthy diet of fantasy and fairy tales, Bex Hogan has spent most of her life lost in daydreams. I like these. Writing her stories down with a natural progression, and now she enjoys sharing her time between living in the real world and escaping to her imagination. Don't we all, Bex? Don't we all?
Yeah, I mean, it's just nice that I've actually been able to get paid to do so.
I know. Yeah, so I'm saying nice for you, obviously. Yeah. You are a Cornish girl at heart, but you now live in Cambridgeshire. All right.
I do. I
have friends in Cornwall. It's fine. She'll be back. And
always
you can
coming back
on Twitter at Bex Hogan and Instagram at Bex_Hogan. PM Freestone writes young adult fantasy and speculative fiction. Her debut novel. Lovely prop here. Shadow Scent, The Darkest Bloom, was published in UK and the USA and has been translated into 7 languages. Pete,
nice.
7? Look at you go. By the way, you have a glorious collection of covers from the different territories. I do like the way
I know. They're
nice.
amazing. I'm so lucky.
Is it the German one that's your favorite?
I think I like the Russian one. Is the same design but is in a hardback that is full foil and amazing.
Oh, beautiful.
I feel there's a slight bias to how often you share that one whenever anyone posts it.
Thank you, Russian readers.
You also have short stories for adults and young It says young people here. Translated, young people have appeared in various print and other venues. You are a Clarion Writers Workshop graduate, a Scottish Book Trust New Writers Award winner. Well done, you. You have been selected for Scooby's 2018 Undiscovered Voices anthology. You also have degrees in archaeology, religious history and sociology, and a PhD in infectious diseases. And sometimes she goes to sleep, everyone. Overachiever.
Well, depending on the neighbours.
We weren't going to mention that. If anyone can hear any background noise, Pete has some work going on next door. We apologise for any inconvenience. She's wearing headphones to help with this. You originally hail from Australia, but you now call Scotland your home. Oh, it's because Scotland's bloody lovely.
Hi.
Yeah, everyone votes on that. Well, that's both our authors introduced. Welcome to Cymera. This is very nice. Bex, would you please, actually, before we do that, if anyone hasn't read either any of our authors' novels or has read only one in the series, please say now. Shall I wait a few minutes see in case anyone's going to put anything in the comments? And then we will be able to gauge the level of spoilers / plot developments. Of course, we can always play it safe and err on the side of caution, which is probably always the best thing to do in my mind. Suzanne, I have read the novels, but she likes the themes. Well, excellent. Ian hasn't read any either. Some people have joined us purely out of curiosity.
Spoiler free.
Spoiler free. Okay.
You've spoken. Spoiler free it is. Thank you very much.
Okay, spoiler free we're going.
We actually can't see how many people are here. Thank you, Jan.
The people have spoken.
Jan, I apologize if I have mispronounced your name. Okay, ladies, spoiler free.
Spoiler free. Okay, we'll do our best.
Okay, so Bex, please introduce us to. I have your prop here. Oh, there we go. You have one too. Isles of Storm and Sorrow. Can I just say, look at these lovely covers, everyone.
So shiny.
Sorry for my lighting. My lighting doesn't do it justice.
Luz, look at them. Oh, so pretty.
Oh, I'm the loser who left mine across the other side of the room, and I'd have to show you my lockdown pajama bottoms if I went.
I would love that if that suddenly was launched.
Well, they're relevant. They've got letters on them.
204.
Okay, now everyone's just sharing books. Okay, sorry. We'll get to the books. But yes, just full acknowledgement for the absolutely beautiful cover design. If I can't see a credit for the art, it's probably on the inside. It's always interesting trying to find the book cover acknowledgement.
Liam Drain for mine.
Thank you very much.
Samuel Perrott for mine.
See? But as we all know, as readers, I mean, we would lie if we said that if the beautiful, shiny book cover comes and says, whoo, magpie. Yes. Shiny. Please introduce us to the Isles of Storm and Sorrow.
Okay, well, this is book one.
I said emphasis on the sorrow.
Well, yeah. Definitely some sorrow. This is book one in the trilogy by Pat, and Venom has just come out. This is book two, but we probably won't venture too far to Venom if we're spoiler free. So it is set in the 12 Isles. It follows Marianne, who is our protagonist. She is the daughter of the Viper. So the Viper is the king's sort of personal assassin, who originally was supposed to keep the island safe and keep the people protected. But this Viper has become very corrupted, very cruel, and he's sort of going around and killing people with impunity and doing whatever he wants to further his own cause. So Marianne has to decide whether she is going to follow in her father's footsteps and become a Viper like him, or if she's going to stand against her father and protect the islands. That's kind of your setup for the trilogy.
That is the setup. You've done that one before. You managed to get a lot into that very short description. Before we come to Pete, an anonymous attendee, you've asked for gallery view. If you go to the top right-hand corner of your screen, you will see an option to click on gallery view yourself. If everyone clicks on gallery view, then you'll be able to see all of our faces at the same time, rather than it flicking through whoever. So if, for example, Pete and I breathe too loudly while Bex is speaking, it would our screen. We've got some questions already. Neil Broadley, is Viper YA or adult? It's It's YA.
It's YA, yeah.
Marianne is.
It's YA, although I would say that probably 70% of my audience is probably adult people who read it. So I think like
That's
most
part
YA,
of the conversation, Bex.
I would say that nearly all YA is for
Yeah.
adults too. So
Yes, we could. I'll make a note here. Discuss YA bookmark later on. Pete, would you please introduce us to Raquel? I'm just really aware I want to pronounce names correctly. If at any point I incorrectly say anything, do let me know. And Aramtesh.
Sure. Well, given that we're doing absolutely spoiler-free, I'm going to stick to the bare minimum. This is the first book in the Shadow Scent duology. As the name probably suggests to you, scent is very important in this world. It's a world where everyday life, the economy, where you find yourself in society, all revolves around scent. And when we pitched it, which I think gives you a very good idea of what the book's about and the feel of it, we said, if you imagine this book like a perfume, so when you read the back of a perfume bottle or the box and you think about the different notes it has, there are usually base notes, heart notes, and top notes. And so we said it has base notes of an ember in the ashes, heart notes of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. There are some quest adventures going on. And top notes of Suskin's perfume, because scent permeates everything in the book, and there's also a little bit of a dark side. So there you go. It follows two protagonists, the first book does, and it's told from their alternate points of view. So Raquel is a poor village girl who is desperate to be able to make enough money for medicine for her father, who is dying of a disease called the rot. You can probably imagine what's going on there with him. And Ash, who is the loyal guard to the crown prince, and they have never been out of the palace because they've been under lockdown essentially for 10 years or so. And it's their first trip on the road. So you can imagine at some point they're going to cross paths and adventure.
So you've got a prince on lockdown and people suffering from the rot. So.
Yeah, it's this was written many years ago, but I do have a PhD in infectious disease management, and I'm afraid it's a coincidence, but yeah, there you're at.
I was going to say, how long have you known about your prophetic abilities?
Yeah.
So this event is called Adventures on Land and Sea. So Peter, what drew you to Aramtesh to make it I mean, I realize it's not all desert, but a large amount of of book one is based in the Empire that is mainly desert?
The Empire's got 5 very different territories, and the beauty of book 2 is there is
I was going to say, map. I was like, I'm trying to work out.
Oh my gosh, this map is so amazing. It's done by one of my favorite fantasy map artists, Virginia Allen, who's done work for, people like, I don't know, Jay Christoph, even some Sarah J. Maas maps, etc. So I'm so lucky to have a map from Virginia, which takes you or lets you see the 5 different provinces of the Empire of Aramtesh. Now, 1 or 2 of them are quite deserty, but the others are not. They're very mountainous.
Yes.
Or one is essentially a bog swamp. So I think what I was looking for is a big, diverse world where I could explore the concept of, what if scent was the most important sense? What if it was a queen of the senses? Whereas in our world, we're probably or arguably more visual. We put a lot of emphasis on the visual as the primary sense. So yeah, I wanted to explore that in all its different incarnations. I wanted to have one of those big expansive fantasy worlds and take the reader to different parts of it, because that's what I enjoyed when I was reading fantasy when I was younger, and even still do, and wanted to explore how scent would play out in those different environmental settings. So yeah, that's kind of why there's so much, I guess, diversity of landscape and culture and different things that appear in the Empire, and you get to see lots of that in book 1. And for those of you who have already read book 1, you get to see the places that you didn't see in book 1 and book 2. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler.
No, I mean, I think book 2 shows you even more of the world, which I think is hopefully what people want when they go to a sequel. They're like, I want more of the same, and then even more things I couldn't have guessed. Bex. So Peter's obviously saying you do have land, but Peter's mainly on land for most of Shadow Scent. What drew you to islands and setting your series at sea?
I think it's probably more than one thing, really. Partially it's because I'm from Cornwall, so being near the sea is just something that's really normal to me. Not now that I'm landlocked in Cambridgeshire, but that's what I grew up with, and we spent a lot of time over on the Isles of Scilly when I was a kid, and I just loved that idea of sort of boat hopping from place to place. The other thing that kind of worked really well with the story is that, so in book one, we're very much growing up on a ship. My character has been on this ship, imprisoned, I guess, like locked down on her ship for the first 17 years of her life, and she hasn't gone beyond that, slightly imprisoned on a ship. And then when she's able to escape that, she escapes to islands, but the islands in their own way are claustrophobic because you can't disappear on an island, you know, there's only so much land, and you can escape to another land, but it all felt claustrophobic, the whole world. I will do a thing with Pete and show you my map.
Love a map.
To just show, I mean, it's not to scale, but it gives you an idea. We've got 6 Eastern Isles,
by the way.
and then we've got 6 Western Isles.
Yeah.
So book one is very much focusing more on the 6 Eastern Isles. But one of the things that I love about the Isles of Scilly is that they all have this really unique identity, even though they're all really close together. So you've got Briar and Tresco, which are like right next to each other, and one is wild and bleak because it gets hit by the Atlantic, and then right next to it you've got Tresco, which is like a tropical island. And so I thought it'd be really exciting to capture that feeling of really being different but all close together, and make a huge expansive world but only in islands. I don't know, it's really hard to pin down why you set your story anywhere, because it all is wrapped up in your characters and your plot anyway. So, but I think that's probably the reasons why.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as you've just hinted at, each of the islands has almost a different they have a different role to play because they're all connected, and from a world different perspective. Did you have a lot of fun with the islands and deciding on the goods and trades and systems
yes, lots of fun. There was the ones that you sort of know specifically, from a plot point of view. There needs to be an island that there can be trade on, so that economically the whole world can work, and there has to be an island where things like are grown. And then, but there was like kind of a few leftover islands where I could be a bit more creative, and I think that's where I had the most fun. So there's an island, the 4th island, which is also known as Floral Island because it's a flower farming island, and I had great fun creating sort of a pretty meadowland, I guess, kind of just for myself really, but then was able to make it integral to the plot as well.
I would love to go to the 4th island right now.
It's everyone's favourite.
No, right now especially. I want to go there.
Okay, you've been great. The 3 of us are going to go to the 4th island. I heard that there is also some real world inspiration behind the islands as well.
Yes, absolutely. Again, I mean, I'm completely happy to admit that I steal everything from real life. None of my ideas are original. So the Floral Island was really inspired, partly, again, in Cornwall, where I grew up, lots of daffodil farmers near where we were. So at certain times of the year, you would drive out and it'd just be just yellow fields, just beautiful. And again, on the Isles of Scilly, the island that we stayed on a lot, St Martin's, has a lot of flower farming. So you would have fields of narcissi and daffodils, whistling jacks, which were a gorgeous kind of hot pink. So I just thought, imagine an island that's just full of that kind of colour and beauty all the time, all year round. But then I kind of drew on other islands as well. So there's a rock island, the 6th Isle, and that's very much kind of inspired by growing up in Cornwall where the tin mines were, and a mining kind of community, and all the granite that we have. I just stole everything, really.
But pieced it together in an incredibly unique.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, I know what you said, that it's looking back, it's always a little challenging to pin down where exactly you started. And I do think this is something that comes up with people who are either trying to write themselves, or they read a book and they really want to know, like, where on earth, I suppose, where did that first penny drop? And I think by world building for both of you, in these really rich and incredibly detailed places that you've created, what was the one thing that you started with that you know was when you knew, okay, that's what I'm going to work on next? And maybe not necessarily at the time you knew it was going to become Viper or Shadow Scent. Pete, do you want to go first?
I think for me, as someone who has a fairly strong sense of smell and who loves perfumes and who was thinking about how we write about scent and how we use scent in literature, and how it was less than I thought it was once I started to explore. Like, I thought, because it's such a sense that is related so closely to memory and emotion, that I thought we would be drawing on it a whole lot more. And once I started to think about scent in writing, I noticed that it was used less than I thought. So it was partly an intellectual challenge. What if there was a world where, as I said, scent is queen of the senses, and how could I incorporate that into my writing? So, you know, pushing me as a writer, but also who would then be the characters that would inhabit that world. And while it was quite a traditional riff on a traditional fantasy for me, a quest-based fantasy, and you know, the coming of age within that, I am always more interested, I guess, in the servants than in the royalty. So I thought, well, how would this world be put together? What would they value? Who would become royalty? How would that work? And therefore, who was inhabiting the periphery? So I suppose, you know, what if we valued scent more than anything else, is kind of the original point. And then two things coalesced around that: what I wanted to do with my writing, but also, you know, who would inhabit that world and what would be their adventures on land and a tiny bit on sea in book 2.
X, what was it for you?
So it's a lot less sort of thought out, really, but the whole idea of
writing is a creative art in itself. You finished a book and you got it published. Well done, everyone who did that.
So the idea for Viper actually is so cheesy, but it came in a dream. I dreamt a scene that's in the book, and the characters were there and they were all quite fleshed out. It was kind of a pivotal book, part of the first book, and it was so vivid. And when I woke up, I just wanted to know who they were and what their story was, and then how that story was going to unfold. And I don't know if anybody else dreams vividly like I do. I'm sure they do, but that sense of, it's just a feeling, you know, the atmosphere of the world, and you know the atmosphere of the plot. You just feel it, you sense it, and so you know what you're trying to capture. You know that it's this one person story, you know, it's following her, and you know that there's danger, you know who your enemies are, you know who you can trust and who you can't. And I knew, although I couldn't see the ship and I couldn't see the sea, I knew they were from a ship, and I knew that they were on an island, or they were on land, but they weren't meant to be from there. And so then I just sort of took it away and kind of pieced out the adventure that I wanted to tell from that. Does that even make any sense?
It does. You know, totally nodding. Feel free, everyone, to say in the chat all the questions, that the three of us are not alone. But no, it's I completely get what you're describing. I could totally go off on a tangent, but you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to these guys. Pete, you work in many fields. You're a very well qualified individual.
It's like a professional student, is what I would have been called at some point. Yeah.
Hey now.
Yeah.
Job market out there. We know how much of your work inspired, particularly the kind of the alchemy elements of the perfume making process within Shadow Scent? They're very specific. There is, I not this is spoiler free because you learn it pretty much in the first chapter. Raquel has a very good sense of smell. She can decipher the bass notes, the mid notes.
Heart.
Heart.
I mean, I would say mid, but
heart
heart is
top
quite.
note.
Heart sounds more glamorous than.
Okay, yes, it does. I mean, you've already said that you have quite a strong sense of smell, which is
Yeah, so I don't, there's a lot of my studies in the world of Aramtesh, or Aramtesh is the empire in the Shadow Scent world. And, you know, there's a lot even of my archaeology days in it too. So while none of the provinces are inspired by particular places, there are definitely, you know, themes and different inspirations from parts of our world in it. So once I started to decide that I was going to write a world based on scent, of course I wanted to know the history of perfumery. And the first perfumer we have on written record is a woman who was also the first chemist we have on record. So the first STEM person, yay, go STEM ladies, and her assistant, her lab assistant, who was also a woman in ancient Mesopotamia. Her name was Taputi, and she has various recipes that survive to this day, or formulae for perfumes that she was making for the then ruler. So that was, you know, part of the inspiration in you know, from my archaeology and history days, and extrapolating from some of that. Not so much my science side, because I look more at, you know, infectious diseases. Yes, that did inspire the rot, and it definitely inspires a lot of the plot of book 2, no spoilers. And there's a lot of, I guess, my PhD in that. But where it came to the alchemy part and the perfume part was actually getting in touch with my favorite perfumery, a little independent but amazing perfumery in London, and kind of just making friends with the perfumer, Sarah, who's amazing, Sarah McCartney, not related to Paul, and learning from her, going behind the scenes in a working perfumery, finding out how perfume's made, finding out what we think is in a perfume versus what's actually in a perfume, and all of the different kind of alchemy almost around making what is an amazing scent as opposed to a bog standard scent was what influenced things as well.
Great. We're in grave danger of just keeping on going. I'm just going to say thank you everyone for adding your questions in. Do keep popping these questions in. We're going to chat for another 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to be going through your questions. So do keep them coming. You have quite seamlessly linked into my next questions, if we planned it. Can we reveal the name of the darkest bloom? Do you think that's fair? Because it is discussed.
Yeah, I don't think that's a spoiler. Is that
it's
a
not
spoiler?
spoiler. It's just a fact. It's just a thing.
Yeah, come on.
I'm pronouncing it for me so I don't get it wrong.
Dakai?
Dakai. Excellent. Yeah. I'm checking. So this plays an integral role in the whole world, and if you could give us a bit of background on that, would be great. But also, you call it the Aramtesh Empire's most precious commodity, and if it's all right for me to mention, during these times of lockdown, unfortunately, you were not able to share the beautiful perfume
No, I know.
you created. You made it with Sarah?
Look, I've got it
made it
here.
with Sarah,
Yes, we
don't
made it with Sarah. Sarah made it. It's incredible.
Tuesdays is the name of the perfumery. And I'm really sorry, but as I was reading the books, I was like, I really want to know what this smells like. So could you tell everyone what the Dakai flower means in the series, and can you describe what it smells like to everyone? So all these people here who haven't read the books yet, hold this in your mind whilst you're reading the books, because it's I don't know, maybe we could make, like, if they were give us the notes, and then everyone would just start sniffing bottles in their houses whilst they're
yeah. No, you won't be able to, because it's actually made from really quite rare ingredients used in modern day perfumery, and a lot of them harkening back to things that were used in various ancient societies. So this is not an ad, but I will be doing a giveaway at some point, because I can post things in lockdown of some tiny vials. So I'll watch out for that on my various social media, because I will do that and post some samples out to people who want to smell it. Because Sarah she's a very sustainable and sort of small batch. They do everything by hand, not big machines perfumery. And so she only made 3 liters, thinking that nobody would really want this perfume, this magical flower in this book. And she's already sold out and she's making the second batch. So we didn't know if she was going to make a second batch or not, because it's, you know, it's this rare and precious ingredients, but she decided to because people seem to be interested. But in the Darkest Bloom, which is representative of the duck eye flower in Shadow Scent, there are ingredients you might not have heard of. There's a thing called buchu, which is it comes from several countries in Africa and has almost like a ribena kind of like currenty kind of scent. There's also, you know, styrax, there's labdanum, which is mentioned in the book for a particular character. There's a character in the first book who wears labdanum, and it's described as dark and smoky as the underworld. So there's all kinds of things like that in the perfume that Sarah and I worked together to try and recreate what would be if you lived in a world where scent was the queen of the senses. What would the best flower smell like? What would this most amazing flower smell like? And duck eye plays a huge role, and I can't say much because of spoilers throughout both of the books. And it is the most precious commodity. We know that at the start of the books. We know that this plant only blooms once a generation, and you know, unlike Sarah, we can't make another 3 liters of it. So, you know, there are stakes.
Stakes. So yeah, if you want to have your own and smell that very precious perfume, follow me at Freestone on social media.
Yeah, I'll be doing some giveaways. This is not an ad to tell you to go and buy it. That's why I'm saying I will do some giveaways. If you are desperate to smell it and you're a Shadow Scent fan, you can write to Sarah at her website and she will hook you up though.
I'm going to have to do that.
Sorry, what was that, Bex?
I said I'm going to have to do that.
Have you read both books?
I have. I love them. I'm a big super fan. So I'll just geek out.
Yes, sorry, I was really interested in your answer to that question there. So there is you've both got different. I'm currently unable to speak English because I have so many thoughts in my head now, and I'm just like currently going, oh, that perfume smells really amazing. Yes, this is what happens on the stage. I would ruffle my papers, but unfortunately I have no papers to shuffle. You have a 3rd book coming out next year, Bex.
Do you? Yes.
That's the end of the series, yes?
It will be the conclusion, yes, Vulture.
I was just wondering if there's any more dramatic cliffhangers that were coming down the pipeline. No, I mean,
I was only mean enough to do a cliffhanger in book 2.
Okay,
I think it's the only time that I think that's allowed. No, book 3 will be a conclusion.
Okay, good. Yeah, like if anyone who hasn't read Viper and Venom, try not to go to Twitter, because basically you can tell when people have read the end of Venom, there is an outpouring of it's the crying emoji just on
capital letters accusing me of being the reason they can't trust anyone.
How could you do this to me? What have you done to me? Yes, there you go. Sorry, and the Cymera Festival episode spoilers. It's not really a spoiler. It's more of a prepare yourself for
prepare yourself for a cliffhanger at the end of book 2. That is all.
We're taking you on a journey.
Yeah, I mean, most trilogies, book 2, there is some sort of nudge to want to go on to book 3.
A nudge?
That's what I'm calling it, a nudge.
Nudge, and everyone's a bit nudge. More. The 3rd book is called Vulture. How has it been having a 2nd novel out this year and another one coming quite soon after? I think, if I remember correctly, they both Viper and Venom have come out within days of each other, a year apart.
Yes, so Viper was out 18th of April 2019, and then Venom was out 16th of April 2020, and then I think Vulture, I'm not sure, April 2021. I'm not sure of the exact date. So yeah, it's been, I mean, this year has not been quite what I imagined. I don't think any of us have had a year that they'd imagined. I was expecting to be out of the house quite a lot more than I have been. So it's just been a bit different. But actually, I think I've been doing edits. So I've just finished my first big structural edit for Vulture, which was a lot harder than I expected it to be. Homeschooling is really hard, and I mean, full respect to people who choose to do it, because wow. So that really knocked my creative mind quite a lot. So I thought the challenge of this year would be doing edits while going out and promoting book 2, but no, it's been homeschooling. Who saw that coming? But it's been fine. Last year was I think trickier, because last year I was promoting book 1, I was editing book 2, and I was drafting book 3. So that was quite intense last year. So obviously it hasn't. I don't think it's just been different. This year has been different. But then everybody has had a year they didn't expect.
Pete, how was it for you coming up to the release date for the second book in the series, and knowing that it was the conclusion, and having that out? It was the published date was beginning of April, is that right?
Yeah, I think it was April 2nd in the end. The days were already passing slightly differently. I have an underlying condition that's a comorbidity with COVID-19, so I was in lockdown before everyone else. And having a PhD in, the global health of infectious diseases and how we manage those probably meant that I was taking it very seriously, very early in the piece. So I knew before everything locked down that I wasn't going to be able to go on the tour that I had planned, which was really sad because it was kind of like my first tour. And I had lots of different visits and cool things planned, and some of them were with Bex. So at least I get to do this now and hang out. So that's super nice. I think for me, it is the duology, at the end of the conclusion of the duology. I see a question in the question saying, will there be a third Shadow Scent book? I would say never, but this is definitely a duology. We wrap up the story, even if, I always like that there's a few things left dangling. I think that's more like real life. Mm-hmm. And I think you can't read your reviews, and I don't read Goodreads, but I was sent a review by my publisher from one of the journals, Books for Keeps, as one of the UK journals for YA and Kids Lit, and the reviewer was very kind, and one of the things that I really loved the most was that they said that Aram Tesh has, kind of the level of depth that makes you believe that this is a land full of untold stories. So I would say that, never say never with another Shadow Scent book, but right now it's a duology. And I think it was a bit sad for that reason, because I'd been building up to, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, I was been building up to adding another character who is very important to me, and who is own voices for a particular reason, which I'm not voicing why here because it's kind of a spoiler. And I
read the books.
Read the books and find out what the own voices aspect is and who the third character is in the second book. So I was really looking forward to talking to people about that, and especially in person. And I met lots of readers, particularly younger readers, who I know would appreciate that during the publication events that I did for the first book. So I guess, a little bit of mourning, but as Beck said, everyone is in the same position. Life is very different for everyone. It's not just me. And I'm working on something new now, and hopefully as authors we like to think that we can build a career over a longer period of time, and this too shall pass, and I'll get to speak to those readers later.
Yeah. So I have one more question, and then we will go to our audience questions. So Marianne is the main narrator in Viper, and we have both Raquel and Ash in Shadow Scent, The Darkest Bloom. And you, as you may have mentioned, Pete, more voices are added in the sequels. I was just wondering, who could it be? What's your thought process when you think about the narrative perspective, and what was it about Raquel and Marianne specifically that made you think of them as your lead protagonists?
Do
Bex.
you want me to go first?
Yes.
I'm gonna yet again demonstrate the lack of thought process that I have when I write a book. I just kind of knew it was going to be her story. I mean, there's definite limitations doing first person narratives and choosing just one voice. There was definitely times in book 2 I was thinking, why did I limit myself to this voice? Because as your world expands, it would be really handy at times to be able to see things from other perspectives, but you know, it was too late by that point, and it is her story, so I had to figure out a way to tell that, and I think every story is different. I think again, it's so kind of vague, but when the story arrives, you know whose story it is. So there's other things I've written that have been multiple points of view, and you know it's because there's more than one story that is important. But for this story, it wasn't any of the other crew members, it wasn't any of the other characters' story to tell. It was Marianne's, and so it was just really natural that she would be the protagonist.
Look, I think Raquel and Ash were pretty much there from the start. I think all of them were kind of there from the start. I think in some ways I just flip what Beck said the other way and be like, it's in some ways it's the story of a land on the brink of particular things, and in order to particular kind of changes and quite seismic changes, pardon the pun, spoiler, anyway, in how life is going to be, and how people are going to be living, and the different challenges that they're facing. So I think it was natural for me to always have multiple characters from the start, and yeah, having Raquel and Ash, and then it was always my intention to have extra voices and characters, and even side characters coming in the second book. So I don't think there was a particular moment where I was like, hey, Raquel's my protagonist, she just got the first chapter. And when you read Crown of Smoke, you might change, or certain readers might change their mind about who actually is the protagonist of this story. The thing that I'm writing now is much kind of more like, even though there's multiple voices, it's more like how Bex was explaining it, and you get that from the start, where I'm like, oh, that's that person's story. This is definitely that person's story. But Shadow's End is, yeah, it's like a world of many stories, and different people have different goals and things to do, and they don't always add up to the same end product. But yeah, sorry, I'm really trying to steer away from spoilers. So.
Yeah, no, I can see that you're doing that, and I apologize.
I'm like,
anyway, no, I like that quote that you shared from the magazine, and I suppose now I kind of can't not think about if you did, like a kind of short story collection of the mythologies of Aramtesh. That would be amazing.
Yes, please do that.
Yeah, so I was actually, here's a kind of non-spoiler, but there used to be short kind of interstitials between chapters in the first version of Shadow Sent, which we took them out. So there's a lot of different documents, mythology, lore, letters from people to other people that were in there to start with, that I thought one day I might share. But also there are, I know who, if there was another separate kind of companion novel, who that would be about. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it just depends how many people buy and read Shadow Sent as to whether my publisher is ever like, oh, could we have that companion novel? So yeah.
Buy the book. I want the companion novel.
You got the 2 books, you gotta get the companion. All right, we have a few questions in from our lovely audience. Thank you for staying with us during this chat. I have not got through all my questions, but we shall have a look at yours. Ian asks, having got the basic plot, did you add regions or islands as the narrative developed, or did you have a master plan? Bex is like, no, I didn't have a
master plan.
No, of course I had a master plan. No, I did always know there was going to be 12 islands. That was always going to be the case from the get-go. I didn't always know what all those islands were going to be like. I mean, did I make stuff up as I went along? Yes, I did. But within, I had like my framework, and then kind of added bits as and where I could to have fun with it.
I have a master plan. It's just the way my mind works. I do masses of world building first. I need to know who my characters are. I'm not blessed with awesome dreams like Bex. And so I build a world and the people who live there, and have very large documents that I guide myself with on the world once I get going. You can even tell I'm just looking at one sitting here on my desk now for the thing that I'm working with at the moment, and it's in a big folder. I'm not going to show you inside it, but
Oh no, show us inside. This is spoiler free. This is spoiler free. No inside the folder. Bex, what comes after the Viper trilogy? Is it a whole new world, or is there a continuation? From anonymous attendee. Thank you very much for your question.
What comes next will very much depend on what I can sell. I am currently working on about 3 different new things, and they are all separate from the 12 Isles world. But I would never say never, like Pete. I would never say never to go back if there was any interest. I mean, I'm kind of flippant about making stuff up, but there is a whole world. I have a whole history worked out. I've got the backstory for characters past and their other people, and side stories of what other people get up to and stuff. So I think there's a huge scope if there was demand for it. But I'm quite keen to have a wee little break, because writing 3 books quite intense. And I'm ready. And I was working on Viper long before I sold it, so I've been working on this world for a long time. So yeah, it's quite nice to stretch my little writery wings and do something a bit different. And hopefully one day there'll be people who can read those ideas.
Let's stretch my writery wings. So I'm saying writery wings a few times.
Writery wings. It was a bit, yeah.
Pete, there's a question in the chat that's a little spoilery, so you might want to have a look. But anyway.
I know who that's from.
Okay.
They know better.
They know who that is. You know who you are. All right, one for both of you. Who are your biggest influences in your work? Pete, do you want to go? Or do you want some time? And shall I go one to Bex first? Okay.
Or in terms of other writers, or just?
I mean, yeah, you can start with the writers. If there's any specific influences that you feel that are outside of people, then by all.
I can talk about something I aspire to. It's not necessarily an influence. I feel like I have vast kind of influences, and I'm a fangirl of so many things that I'm sure some of that creeps in, but I aspire, I think, long term to something. I aspire, don't assume I will ever make it here, and I don't think I ever will, but to N.K. Jemison's Broken Earth trilogy, in terms of what is a masterful and hugely powerful fantasy on so many different levels. There's a reason it swept all of those awards across the trilogy year after year. And if you're a fantasy fan and you read adult fantasy as well as YA, and you haven't read N.K. Jemison's Broken Earth trilogy, please go and do yourself a favor. But yeah, in terms of things that I would one day wish to, fancifully emulate at least 10% of the greatness of, that's one from me.
It's one for the books. Hugo Award every year.
It's incredible.
Yeah, different way of approaching storytelling, uses you, and
if the second person is almost never used well, and the second person is deployed, like you were doing this, you were doing that, you did that, blah blah blah. Yeah, it's amazing.
Really powerful. I haven't finished the series, but I have been meaning to get to it. I had a few books to read before then, so that's
why?
I wonder why. Bex, what about you?
I struggle to think of a sort of any one inspiration. I think probably all writers are inspired by everything that they read beforehand. If I have to pick one inspiration, probably I'm gonna always come back to the Grimm's fairy tales, which were the things I was brought up on. My mum read them to me before I could read. It has just always been embedded in me. Dark tales, I just love them. I don't like the sugar-coated sweetness of. I mean, I'll watch them because they're quite fun with my kids. But you know, I love tales that are a bit dark, that aren't pretty. That, you know, Ashpetal's stepsister is going to lob her toe off and she's going to shove it in that slipper. But there's always a sense of justice at the end. And I think I'm as inspired probably by the films I grew up on as much as the books I grew up on. So adventure-y stories, pure escapism. I mean, I'm sort of...
That's sort of the Indiana Jones in Shadowsent, definitely.
Yeah.
Is a thing. Yeah.
You know, like Princess Bride and Krull and Legend and all those kind of pure fantasy, pure escapism. That's the kind of thing I like. I like to watch it, I like to read it, and that's the kind of thing I want to write.
Oh. So now I'm just like, ooh, all those different things I grew up with as well. Bex, for Viper, did you... Oh, I had this question as well, Suzanne, and I'm glad that you put it in there at half past, because then I didn't... Have you spent time on boats? And I'm going to add, can you sail?
Yeah, no. I'm not a sailor. Despite growing up near the water, I've always been really afraid of it, which is a character trait I share with my protagonist. I think if you grow up near the water, you're either the kind of, I mean, maybe not exclusive, but it's you either are on the water or you at least have a healthy respect of the water. Of, you know, the ocean can look really, you know, calm and beautiful and alluring, but actually you go wander too far and suddenly you've lost your footing and you're a bit stuffed. And tides can turn and all that kind of thing. So I kind of grew up respectful but slightly afraid. So no, don't like sailing. So of course, yeah, I had to do quite a lot of research for the boats and stuff. And fortunately for me, in Cornwall, there is a wonderful Georgian harbour called Charleston, where they have beautiful tall ships that you can go on and visit. So I was able to wander up there and have a lovely time poking around beautiful boats that weren't moving, which was on the water, but they weren't moving. That's great.
I feel like that's key.
Yeah, no moving. Although, I mean, you know, I will go on boats. On the Isles of Scilly, you have to boat hop to go from island to island. So that's about as good as it got for me on boats. Little kind of motor boats, and you know, little rowing boats when I was a kid and stuff. But not a sailor. I mean, I'd be awful. I'd get seasick. I wouldn't do well in my world, really. No.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about a particular, was it Shadowsent? And I was like, I don't think I'd survive for very long, to be honest. It'd be one of those passers by that like accidentally gets like pushed through a crowd and then just falls off the side of a building. But like, well, that was short. There you go.
Yeah. Go in with good intentions and then die really quickly.
Yeah. It's always the best of intentions, though.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for all of your questions. Unfortunately, we have reached our time. That flew by. It flew. But thank you so much. There is also the option that if our authors can, that they will be able to type some short answers to you. So we'll be able to see if we can get them to you after the event. But please join me in thanking. I don't know if you can wave or send comments if you wish to, but thank you very much, PM Freestone and Bex Hogan, for joining me this afternoon for the first live, and I believe we may have not had any massive technical issues. Of Cymera has gone digital for 2020. The UK is still Science Fiction Horror Festival, which I'd like to emphasize because genre fiction is fab.
Yay.
But thank you very much. I want to applaud, but it's a little weird. Small issues, says the tech support. Well, thank you very much. We didn't know any of that. Not from this side. Seamless. Well, thank you very much, and that was brilliant.
Thank you.